So guess what? This is quite a story. The FDA, this is from Stat News. The FDA limits use of Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine, citing clot risks. Now, I thought that they knew about this. Well, we're going to find out. Let's go into the story, shall we? The Food and Drug Administration on Thursday announced it was limiting access to Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine because of the risk of a blood clotting disorder that was discovered weeks after the vaccine was first put into use in the spring of 2021. What? Well, why? So they discovered this. So why are they just now pulling it? Why are they just now limiting its use? Well, Peter Marks, the FDA's vaccine lead, told Stat that the agency reached its decision after a recent review of the data on the vaccine revealed another person in this country had died after receiving it. The 9th such death in the first quarter of the year. By the way, remember when someone would tell you that they got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and you kind of looked at them a little different? You remember that? Oh, really? I didn't know you were trash. I mean, I got Pfizer because, you know, I'm not poor. So they had 9 deaths from the Johnson & Johnson. So they had another death in the first quarter of this year. That's 9. The vaccine is made by Johnson & Johnson Vaccines Division, Janssen. Yeah, so, you know, 9 deaths doesn't sound like a lot of deaths. Here, let me fix it. Here's how they always say it. That's 20 times more deaths than the dog. Remember, you know, they always say that? Why don't they do that? Do you know how bad it is for them to even have to say this stuff about it? Do you know how bad it must be for them to admit this? I don't know how bad it is because it's proprietary information, and I think they're going to try to withhold it for 75 years. Going forward, this is what is being recommended going forward from the FDA. The single-dose vaccine will only be available to people over 18 who cannot take one of the other available vaccines for medical reasons. Or if someone simply will not agree to be vaccinated with the mRNA vaccines made by Moderna and Pfizer. So the only people who are going to be able to request a Johnson & Johnson vaccine are people who, for medical reasons, can't take the other ones. That's how much they don't want to let people take this vaccine. So I don't know. Basically, it's considered the Salem menthols of vaccines now, I think, right? Because you can only give it to people over 18 who, you know how they tried to take this? Yeah. Okay. The clotting disorder called thrombosis with thrombocytopenia, or TTS. Let's just call it TTS. It's rare, occurring at a rate of about 3.25 cases per million doses. Does that sound rare to you? But the condition can be fatal or life-altering if an individual survives. With 1 death for every 2 million doses given in this country. What? 1 death for every 2 million doses given in this country. The FDA decided that that's a risk that most people don't need to take. What? When the clotting risk was identified in mid-April of 2021, they immediately took it off the market and apologized to everybody. No, what they did, they paused the vaccine, but then they unpaused it. Why? Though the pause was lifted 10 days later. Because I remember Joe Rogan told me he was set to get that vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. He was set to get it. And then right before he was supposed to get it, they pulled it for 10 days. And he was like, what? The pause was lifted 10 days later. Confidence in the vaccine had been shaken, and demand for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine plummeted. Well, that's good that it plummeted, right? Because you guys were still allowing people to take it, even though now you realize they shouldn't. Like, what changed that they unpaused it? I don't know. I'd like to know. In December, the independent panel that advises the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, on vaccines issued a preferential recommendation for the mRNA vaccines over the Johnson & Johnson product. So in December, they had doubts. They've known about this. Of the 577 million doses of COVID vaccine administered in the United States, only 18.7 million of those were Johnson & Johnson's. The company said it has updated its product sheet to reflect the FDA's restrictions. Well, that's nice. In a statement, it said, data continue to show that the benefits of the vaccine outweigh its risks when compared to going unvaccinated. Two deaths per million doses. What was it? Let me get the data. One death for every 2 million doses. That's the data. So they killed 9 people. So 9 people died from that, according to this data. Marks, that's the guy from the FDA, he stressed that people who received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine... Now, remember that the people who were the head of the vaccine department at the FDA resigned over the booster. The head of it. And the first person underneath the head of it. They both resigned. So I'm pretty sure this guy is the guy they got to replace the people who resigned. So he said that the people who received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the past, they don't need to worry. Why? Because that clotting disorder, when it occurs, develops a week or two after vaccination. People who were vaccinated months ago are not in danger of developing the condition, he said. He acknowledged the latest announcement won't change much on the ground in the United States, where a few vaccine sites stock the Johnson & Johnson vaccine at this point. But it could have implications abroad, where countries still struggling to vaccinate their populace could be influenced by the U.S. decision. In the this is, to me, almost the most interesting part of this. In the United States, this is probably not going to have that much of an effect, Mark said. We're trying to be cautious, and we've informed our global partners, the WHO, for instance, about this problem with the vaccines, and we tried to work with them because we don't want our global partners to be panicked. Because you still want other people to take this in the rest of the world, right? We're not saying that it's a bad vaccine. We just don't want people to take it anymore. We're just saying that for our population, I guess in the United States, that's what they mean by our population, where there's an alternative vaccine, we feel that the alternative should be used. So with Americans, we're making sure they don't use this. But they don't want to spook the rest of the world. They want the rest of the world to keep using it. That's what that says to me. What does it say to you? Isn't that and then this was so this guy tweets it out. He tweets out this story. FDA restricts Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine due to blood clot risk, and they put a misleading on it. Twitter. This guy says, so Twitter literally flagging reports about the FDA announcement limiting Johnson & Johnson vaccines as misinformation is hilarious and perfectly captures the current zeitgeist. So you wanted to mandate that people get this. There were people who wanted to mandate, force people to get this in order to participate in society. There's a lot of people. And shame on those people. Because that is not a lefty position. Lefty position is about bodily autonomy. And you should always be suspicious of the government and big pharma. And those people on the left who are pushing mandates, shame on you. Shame on you. And they'll never apologize for it. They'll never say I was wrong. Just like the people who pushed Russiagate will never apologize for it and never say they were wrong. Just like the people who were against forced to vote will never apologize for that and never say they were wrong. Even though now everybody knows that they were wrong. And they admit it in other ways. So there you go. Wow. I just don't, sounds like an old joke set up. We're not saying it's a bad vaccine. We're just saying we don't want to take it, but poor country should. But poor country should. Isn't that something? So now, those 9 people who died, who do they sue?
They have no recourse.
They can't sue anybody. And I don't know why not, because they knew about this when it first got rolled out. And then they paused the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Then they unpaused it. And now they're repausing. So that sounds corrupt and criminal to me. What does it sound like to you? That's what it sounds like. I want to know why they unpaused the vaccine when they first discovered this clotting problem. They discovered this clotting problem immediately, and they didn't pause it forever. But they are now. We're doing live stand-up shows in Cleveland, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Des Moines, Omaha, Kansas City, Las Vegas, all over the country. Go to JimmyDoreComedy.com for a link for tickets. And single tickets now available at all venues. So if you tried to buy one before and you couldn't, single tickets are now available. Plus, while you're at JimmyDoreComedy.com, why don't you become a premium member? Sign up to our mailing list so when they cancel us, we can still stay in touch.